Oh, excuse me. I hate when I'm trying to find something. It shouldn't take me so long. Excuse me. Do. Silly, where did it go? Oh, I tell you. Carlos is failing tonight. Silly, I thought I had that. Maybe it's this one actually. Maybe that took me way longer than I was supposed to. Sorry, guys. Hi, Georgie. Hey. Oh my God, you guys are so cute. I also love that you remember that I said I was not going to be live tonight, but I saw another interview that came out, and when I say interview, it's not a Sketchy Friend interview. It is a Dr. Turvey interview, and I'm so happy to come on here and play it here tonight for everybody. So we're going to give everybody a couple minutes. We will get started, you guys. Time for it to end, you guys. So so many of you already remembered I said I was going to take the night off here. However, an interview came out, and it's very important, and it's not only is it important, but it means something to me as well too. So I didn't want to take the night off. I was like, oh no, we're gonna get up and we're gonna play this, and we're going to talk about it. And if my OGs remember, I said a few weeks ago, and I kind of had a hard time like getting my words out because I wasn't sure how I wanted to word this, and also not have it come off like super cheesy or anything like that. But I have grown and made some genuine friendships along this journey of mine, and one of them is with Kristen, who is part of the Custody Queens Off the Clock, and she partners with Ron as, you know, a lot as well too. A few weeks ago, or whenever it was a while ago, I was on here with you guys, and I said, again, trying to get my words out without it being super cheesy, but something along the lines of, these interviews that they have done are so powerful, and they're not just powerful. I think the three of them are powerful, and I think that they're going to make a difference. And I hope some of you guys remember that. And again, I just wanted to get my words out correctly because I think we're all making a difference, and I believe that we all are. But what they have done is just so important, and I am just so proud to get on here tonight and talk about this other interview that came out. And I genuinely believe, and I'm going to leave it up to the viewers to either agree or disagree, that they absolutely fucking made a difference. And I am beyond proud to not only just like know them, but I am personally closer with like Kristen out of the three of them. We've, again, grown this friendship. I think many of you guys kind of know that now. We talk about it. Her and I work together now, you know, monthly, whatever it is. But, genuinely so fucking proud of them, all three of them, and I'm happy to play this interview today. This interview recently came out from a lady by the name of Donna Ratano. She did an interview with Dr. Turvey. So this is, I believe, the only other person Dr. Turvey has done an interview with. This would be the second interview. This is very much new within the last day today. So this is what I'm going to be playing for everybody. So again, I believe the Custody Queens and Ron made a fucking difference. And if you believe that too after listening to this, make sure to give them a little comment maybe over on YT or over here on TikTok, and just let them know that, you know, you agree or whatever. However you want to go about it. Maybe you won't say anything at all. That's okay too. But definitely thank you for being here and listening. I believe they made a fucking difference. Let me know what you guys think after this, okay? let's go. So this is an interview again. Donna Rotuno. You guys know how I hate pronouncing names. Dr. Turvey just did an interview with her. It's about 45 minutes long. We're going to listen to it today. And as always, we'll kind of stop it and talk about it as we go. Okay, so let's go.
This is Crime and Justice. I'm Donna Rotuno. Bryan Kohberger is jockeying to take back his guilty plea, saying it was hinged on false promises and blatant disinformation. The change of heart came after experts have publicly questioned the evidence post-plea deal. Back with me today is Dr. Brent Turvey, a crime scene analyst expert who was hired by the Kohberger defense team. I think in light of the fact that Bryan Kohberger has filed paperwork under a post-conviction theory to withdraw his plea, I think this conversation is going to be enlightening, and I can't wait to get into it. Talk to me about how you felt when you heard that Mr. Kohberger had filed this petition to withdraw his plea, and what was your reaction when you first heard that news?
Well, there's a number of ways that I reacted to it, but my first initial reaction as a person, as somebody who works in the justice system and observes it, was relief. I was relieved, mainly because of the way of what he said in his filing. It was some important facts and details came out that really haven't been covered at all. I mean, I want to take a moment to talk to you like a person, like you're a human being. I'm a human, you're a human. We both have human emotions, sure, and have human responses to these things. And it's been, the word I would use is disgusting. It's been disgusting the way that most of the topics around this case have been talked about and shared and even ruminated and theorized over. And I'm grateful to be in this space with you because I know you're not like that. You're more of a facts and law, and that's how I prefer to meet this case, because it's more productive that way. So really great relief.
Yeah, for sure.
Primarily because so many things happened in that plea that people have only speculated about and continue to speculate about. And the first one is that no one seems to be saying out loud, which is that Ann Taylor and her legal team were fired. They were just fired across the board. There's no getting away from that, what happened there.
When you say fired, you mean that when he filed his petition, he did it on his own, so therefore...
F-I-R.
He obviously didn't ask them to do it, and then he asked for other counsel to be appointed to him. So is that what you're referring to when you say fired?
I don't know how we can see it any other way. That's the other problem we have with this
case.
No,
I agree. That's just what I'm. No, yeah, that's what I'm asking. I agree with that. I just want to be clear so people understand. Yeah.
Exactly.
Period.
For those of us who work these kinds of cases, I mean, I do investigative cases for law enforcement. I do cases for prosecutors, and then I also do cases for defense attorneys and civil attorneys, and then I also do post-conviction cases, quite a few of them, to review things done after the conviction has already occurred. And I think it's just interesting how people are tripping over themselves to try to describe this in another way, to try to give some leeway to what's happening or create some sort of intrigue or mystery about it. Kohberger laid it out pretty clearly what the issues were. And that's so my sense is relief that he is actually able to speak for himself, as opposed to being suppressed by Ann Taylor. Ann Taylor no longer holds the privilege. The privilege is his, and he gets to decide what he wants to say. And that has not been true since the plea. And that's the other thing. It goes, if you want, we can go right into what the plea is and what he claims if you want. But so my first reaction was relief, and now it seems like the real work might actually get done. Those are my sentiments. Well,
before I definitely want to get into the plea, but before we do that, let me ask you this. So, for the regular person who has no exposure to the criminal justice.
For those just coming in, no, we are listening to Dr. Turvey with doing an interview with Donna Rotuno. Damn, she said her name in the beginning. Whatever. No disrespect. I'm just really bad at pronouncing names. It's over on YT. This is new. This just came out. I listened to it earlier. Again, was going to take the night off here, but absolutely not with this. So that's what we're listening to. So we're listening to him discuss it with Donna. She also has a background in the criminal justice world system, it does appear as well too. This interview is very important. Correct, Lish. Agreed.
The system, who hasn't sat in courtrooms the way you have or I have. We watch Brian Koberger sit in a court, right?
I think she's an attorney. I'm sure that will get discussed. I think.
Right? And we watch the judge ask Brian Koberger a series of questions that he responded to. And we also saw that Brian Koberger filled out a piece of paper that basically, said, I am pleading guilty of my own free will, and, I'm satisfied with my counsel. So talk to me a little bit about how now, he's going to say, I want to withdraw all of this. And let's kind of go through that in terms of the plea. And, because to me, Brian Koberger does not seem like a dumb guy, right? Like, we're seeing his filings, we're seeing what he's written, and I'm kind of wondering how we reconcile this idea that he is an intelligent person. He was college educated, he was a teacher, he was a teacher's assistant, he was taking classes, and now, now we're hearing that he has written things to the court that are intelligent. So talk to me about how we reconcile this idea that he got up before a court, said all these things, and now he's saying, wait, this wasn't right. Like, why did he wait until now to bring those things up rather than say, I'm not going to plead guilty in the first place?
I'll just say is this: anybody who's questioning this process has obviously never been a criminal defendant charged with murder, and certainly not charged with capital murder. So second guessing this is kind of, it's one of those things that I find really unpalatable, because I've done this. I've worked probably 25, 30 death penalty cases in my career and testified in many of them. And what attorneys tell clients to do is shut up, don't make a face, don't respond, don't react, and above all, don't talk.
Shut up, don't make a face, don't talk, don't do anything. The amount of people who came after Brian for him looking like there was darkness in his eyes and all that shit. But listen to Turvey explain this.
Look straight ahead or take notes. That's the instruction given to every client, every defense client ever. All right? Whether or not they take that advice is something.
That's the advice given every single time. He's about to just say whether they take that or not, that's on them. It appears Brian definitely took that advice.
Anything else? So from the perspective of Ann Taylor, from her legal team, he's a good client, doing what he's told.
There you go.
Trying to maintain that stoicism, which cannot be judged. Because as you can see from this case, as I said at the outset of this interview.
But it was judged. It was absolutely judged, and he continues to be judged for there's no reaction. There's absolutely no reaction. Sorry to pause it, but you have, even at that, where you have the family impact statements and speech, whatever, all that stuff, you've got fathers pumping their fists at him, saying, I wish if we were in the woods together. You've got sketchy friends that are, in my opinion, lying. That's up to you to decide. You've got all of these people coming to that stand and saying so much to him. Again, whether their father's patting their chest or their sketchy friends lying, or it's Dylan saying, please, can you block him so she doesn't have to look him in the eyes? He's sitting there because that's what they're told to effing do. And guess what? That was still a problem. In fact, I think they made that a huge problem. Did they not? They were like, he is a monster. There is no reaction. There is no reaction. There's nothing there. Okay. Right here from Dr. Turvey, he's saying every single person is told don't fucking react. And that's exactly what Brian Koberger did. And that was a problem.
The response
you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
It's really been our worst selves. We've been our worst selves in responding to this, smacking our chops over the deaths of these young girls, making light, making jokes, making fake AI videos to purport the side or the other. It's been very grotesque. It's been a menagerie of the grotesque, in my opinion. He has been a good client. He has been doing what he's told. He has not been talking, as he's been told. He's been letting Ann Taylor and her legal team talk for him. And as you and I both know, up until the weekend before the plea, it was all, I'm innocent. I want to take this to trial. I want to take this to court. Now, The question is, why would he then get up there? Well, first of all, he didn't allocute. That's the first thing.
Oh.
The second thing, and it's clear from his filing, is he was told two things. One, you need to confess or to get a plea to take the death penalty off the table. That's what he was told by his attorneys. Bad advice across the board, but that was the advice he was given. Then the second thing that he was told, according to his filing, was that it's okay to lie about whether or not you did it, because that will set legal things in motion, and then we will start to do appeals and we'll start to do other things around that. But this will give us time. This is a time-saving device.
Tile Survive has to be one of the most relaxed.
Carlos! Sorry, guys. It's an ad. Yeah, fuck. Here we go.
Fully implied in his filing. So why would he?
We'll go back like 5-10 seconds.
And then we will start to do appeals and we'll start to do other things around that. But this will give us time. This is a time-saving device. That's what's heavily implied in his filing. So why would he do it? One, because he was told to. And then two, he was told it would not be of legal significance. Now, whether or not you and I would have believed that, if I had been in the room in that conversation, I would have said, what the f*** are you talking about? You don't tell people it's suborn perjury. Knock that off right now. That's what I would have done.
I feel like he half-assed used the F word, and I'm here for it.
But I wasn't in the room. I have no, and I happen to know now who was in the room, and I know exactly what was said.
Oh, hi, Baking Bag.
And it comports with the meeting that Ann Taylor had with us, which caused me to get up and walk out. Which is that she basically said I couldn't get him to take the plea initially. I couldn't get him to do it. So what did I do? I went and I enlisted his family. I told him he had to do it. I gave him a horror show of what death row was going to be like. And I told him what it was going to be like if he was, just in there as a regular inmate, not on death row. And it took more than a day and a half, maybe 2 days, to get the family to convince him to take the plea. So why did he do it? I mean, in my head, I've seen this kind of scenario play out before, but only with extremely unethical attorneys who don't want to go to trial for whatever reason.
I'm wondering why you wouldn't want to go to trial. Like, this was not a financial situation, right? The Kobergers were not paying for his legal defense. The taxpayers of the state of Idaho were paying, so their bills were being paid. They work for a public defender's office, which obviously they are paid. So, and this is not a case where, I don't know, I think the majority of the public were expecting anybody to win. So I guess my question is, what do you really have to lose? And yeah, okay, the death penalty is one area of conversation, right? We can talk about the death penalty, but I know, and hopefully Brian Koberger understood that just because the state asks for the death penalty doesn't mean if you lose at trial, they're going to impose it on you, right? That is something that a jury decides after the fact, and you can present mitigating evidence and things of that nature, and your mother can get up and talk about how awful it would be to know that her son is being
Notice how she said if he doesn't know. Now he does.
put to death. And so there are ways to fight against the death penalty. So that was not a foregone conclusion if he were to go to trial and lose. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what do you think? I've always said as a lawyer, I will try anything, right? I am not in the business of trying to convince clients to take pleas. I, of course, have conversations with clients when offers are made to them, because that is our ethical obligation to do so. We must convey any offers made to clients. But in 26 years of doing this, I have never twisted anybody's arm, and I say to them, you live with the consequence of your decision. You want me to go in there and fight for you? I'll fight for you. So what do you think, what do you think they had to lose here by going to trial? I mean, they fought pretty hard throughout the pendency of the case. They obviously hired experts to try to put them in a position that was better at trial. So I'm just wondering, like, what do you think it was ultimately that she just didn't want to fight? Because frankly, the fight that was going on, as long as it was a fight. The trial aspect of it isn't really that difficult once you're prepared. So I'm just wondering what you think happened here.
I have some speculations, but first let me just say, Donna, I wish you had been there. I wish you had been in the room. I wish you had given that advice. That was not, he was not getting that advice. That's the first thing. So one, he had no advocates for him in that room. he had only people that wanted him to plea out because they didn't want to go to trial. 2, he didn't have all the information about all the exculpatory evidence that we had found. He didn't know that. He didn't know what the defense team had uncovered. And it's not me by myself. None of this stuff, according to his filing and according to other things that I'm aware of, he wasn't provided any of the defense reports. He didn't even know I existed until I went on a podcast.
What?
So that's its own little separate problem.
And we know that because he told somebody that, or how do we know that? Because if that's the case, that's.
Let's make sure we go back so everybody heard that correctly, okay?
I'm aware of. He wasn't provided any of the defense reports. He didn't even know I existed until I went on.
Brian wasn't. Oh, excuse me. Carlos. Brian wasn't given anything. And let's just keep listening to what Turvey says, okay?
Podcast. So that's its own little separate.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Team had uncovered. And it's not me by myself. None of this stuff, according to his filing and according to other things that I'm aware of, he wasn't provided any of the defense reports. He didn't even know I existed until I went on a podcast. So that's its own little separate problem.
And we know that because he told somebody that, or how do we know that? Because if that.
Brian didn't know Turvey existed until he went on a podcast. What?
It's the case. That's
something that I have not disclosed yet, which I think is important to know.
Me too, Dr. Turvey. Let's keep going.
And that is that after I did Queens of Custody and your podcast, the family reached out to me like, who the hell are you and what are you doing on this case? And why haven't we heard of all this stuff before? And then I immediately like, okay, well, let's talk. And then I handed them off to people who were.
One more time.
By myself. None of this stuff, according to his filing and according to other things that I'm aware of, he wasn't provided any of the defense reports. He didn't even know I existed until I went on a podcast. So that's its own little separate problem.
And we know that because he told somebody that, or how do we know that?
How do we know that?
If that's the case, that's
something that I have not disclosed yet, which I think is important to know. And that is that after I did Queens of Custody and your podcast, the family reached out to me like, who the hell are you and what are you doing on this case? And why haven't we heard of all this stuff before? And then I immediately like, okay, well, let's talk. And then I handed them off to people who were.
I'm going to stop it right here. I see the comments coming in, you guys. I leave it up to the viewers to decide. Woo! Did they make a difference or did they not make a fucking difference? Let me know what you think in the comments. I think all the comments so far that I've seen come through was absolutely. Brian Koberger didn't even know who Dr. Turvey was until he did an interview with the custody queens Off the Clock and Ron, and also Donna, the same woman he's doing an interview with right now. Brian had no idea until Dr. Turvey did a podcast with the queens and Ron and Donna. Yeah. Wow. Wow. What do you guys think about that? How fucking crazy is that? That interview that they did made so much difference. This is why it's important to have a voice. Not everyone wants to be a creator or have podcasts, and that is so okay. But a huge shout out to the queens and Ron for these multiple interviews that they've done. They have made all the difference. And to think that Brian Koberger and his family had no idea about some of the exculpatory evidence or any idea about Dr. Turvey or his report or yada until this fucking podcast with them. and Donna, the only two people he's done a podcast with. To every single troll on the internet that says you're not gonna make a difference or what are you doing, blah, 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 blah. Well, a huge fuck you to them, because the true crime community has absolutely made a huge, huge difference in this case, and it absolutely proves it. This shows it. It proves it. So even though you might not be someone that's comfortable getting on camera, that's okay. Not everybody again, it's not made for everybody either. I don't recommend it for everybody. But when you're silently watching and you're silently following, and then maybe you start commenting, whatever the case may be, you're making a difference as well. And I have said this from the beginning, whether people think I'm being cheesy or whatever, but for me, it's who I am and my character. It has always been a we thing. Always. And you guys are just as important for keeping this and keeping our voices alive. And a huge, huge shout out to, again, the Queens and Ron. Their professionalism is shining right now. You don't have to agree with everything they say. You don't even have to like them. But it is undeniable at this point that they made a fucking difference in this case. And I am so proud to have worked with them. I am proud to know Kristen on a personal level and to have a friendship with her. I believe we are more powerful together. And this just shows. I haven't been able to look at the comments so I can get the rant out. This just shows how important everybody is. It's so, so important. We have all made a difference. So if you're not already following them, make sure you're on the YT and go find Custody Queens Off the Clock. You can also find them over here on TikTok as well. You guys, Kristen and I work together monthly here, if not a couple times a month. So I'm sure we'll see her back on TikTok as well too. We're gonna have to get her back on here, you guys. She's on YT a lot more. But so proud to just know them. They're powerful. I had a feeling weeks ago, we talked about it together as a community, whether people think it's cheesy or not, but I had a feeling that they were going to make a difference. And I leave it up to you guys to decide if you think they did or not. So let's keep the interview moving. All right.
Who had legal minds, which I do not. So I'm like,
I feel your pain. I understand what you're saying. The next thing, one more time, and we'll keep that shit moving right here.
Uncovered. And it's not me by myself.
Here we go.
None of this stuff, according to his filing and according to other things that I'm aware of, he wasn't provided any of the defense reports. He didn't even know I existed until I went on a podcast. So that's its own little separate problem.
And we know that because he told somebody that, or how do we know that? Because if that's the case, that's
disclose something that I have not disclosed yet, which I think is important to know. That is that after I did Queens of Custody and your podcast, the family reached out to me like, who the hell are you and what are you doing on this case? And why haven't we heard of all this stuff before? And then I immediately like, okay, well, let's talk. And then I handed them off to people who had legal minds, which I do not. So I was like, I feel your pain. I understand what you're saying. The next step has to be legal steps that I can't be involved in. So you need to go do that. There are things that have to happen that I can't be a part of. And that's what happened. So I got told by the family directly that they had not received that stuff.
I mean, that's
the next thing
that's troubling. That's troubling.
Very troubling. It gets worse. It's way worse than you can possibly imagine. Way worse than I even worried about. I always game out the worst case scenarios and then I sort of prepare for them, hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of deal.
I know, right?
And it's way worse. The family has not spoken yet because they're frightened out of their minds about what's going to happen the next time they speak. The vultures will descend, the legal consequences. They've been told to be quiet for this whole time, and they've also done the same thing. Notice Brian Koberger did not allocute because he couldn't, because he didn't know what happened. His family has not spoken out other than the sister giving one interview. And even that, after that, she's now a little gun shy, but they're trying to talk, but they really don't have the facility to do that. They don't trust anybody, and they shouldn't. But Koberger himself, in his filing, makes this very real and says, I didn't know any of this stuff. I wasn't being told anything. I wasn't being given good advice. And I was told the opposite of some of the things that are occurring right now. And he is, as any good client does, has held his water this entire time, because the person who speaks for him is Ann Taylor. And in lockup, he had no ability. Well, in lockup, he was even more limited by what he could say and who he could say it to. Now, I'll give you one other piece of information that I learned from the Koberger family. She hasn't spoken to him since the plea. So she's in court representing him without even talking to him.
Oh, Carlos. Sorry, guys. Add. There we go.
Imagine.
So
that
let me.
scenario.
No.
So the
no.
question
Make sure nobody misses that, okay?
of information that I learned from the Koberger family.
Yeah, wow.
She hasn't spoken to him since the plea. So she's in court representing him without even talking to him.
Carlos.
Can you imagine?
So
that
let me.
scenario?
No.
So the
no.
question
No. I.
Yep, see the comments are coming in. Sorry that Carlos interrupted that. She hadn't even talking to him.
Questions you're asking are really for Ann Kober. Why didn't you share this exculpatory material? And why aren't you talking to your client?
Yeah, I mean, that just makes no sense to me. And when I look at this, and I want to be really clear, so people that
it
are
makes sense to
listening
me
or watching
in my little
understand.
brain. It makes sense to me,
Yeah.
but we can speculate
Well,
as to
sure,
why.
sure.
No, I want him to speculate. Dr. Turvey, tell me what the fuck you're thinking.
Well, and when I look at this, and I want people who are listening or watching to understand, there is a very big difference between the atrocities
Hey, Rachel.
and the horrific things that happened to these 4 young college students and the court process. And so, everybody out there is talking about how awful this is for the families to have to relive this, and this is coming back. And it is. It's
Wait
awful.
for
It's
this
awful
shit, you
that it
guys.
never happened in the first place. But I think every person of every family member would want to make sure that whoever was put behind bars for this is actually the person who did it. And so, I've always
say
thought.
that's generally true, but I won't just speak out on this very issue because it's one of the things that disgusts me the most. I've never seen a family try to sell their daughter's story like this before, ever. Going to Crime Con, trying to get different documentary deals. I'm disgusted by that. I wouldn't even think to do that as an expert, and I have access to everything. I'll talk to you, and we'll have a professional conversation, but not for money.
Sure.
And certainly, I wouldn't. Anybody who's out there trying to sell a story for money, that's grotesque.
And I'm not going to judge what people do when they're put in the most horrific situations. I mean, obviously we can have personal opinions on it, but in terms of, just being, and again, you have to remember that these are people that are talking to one side, right? They're talking.
When I watched this the first time, I was like, fuck. I was like, he said that with his entire chest. He said that with his entire chest.
To the prosecutors. They're looking at what the prosecutors are showing them. They're believing
His words, not mine.
what they
Yep.
hear. But prosecutors sit down with family members prior to pleas and talking about strength of evidence, and they do that in terms of actual facts or physical exhibits or things like that. That might be a little bit different, but I do think that
I feel like we haven't really heard anybody kind of address any of the families, in that manner, in that kind of manner. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, oh. So, yeah.
a practical standpoint, even
Right, Batty?
people who
I'm sure they
it's
will.
very difficult to relive this. I would think that even at some point your logical brain would take over and you would say, okay, if this really isn't the guy, then we want to make sure that we find the guy. But now let me ask you this question, because here's the practical side of this. This is a very difficult thing to overcome for Brian Koberger, right? Taking back a plea, putting yourself in a position to get to actually have a trial and to be able to plead not guilty. This is a legal burden that is very high. And so I'm wondering where you think this goes next for him. Do you think legally he has enough to go into the court and say, you know what, my lawyer was ineffective and didn't do a good job, and I'm, the legal standard's high, and I'm just wondering because, the courts give a lot of deference to lawyers saying that was strategic, they made a decision, they decided not to do this. Now, it's a little different when you're talking about a plea versus a trial that went bad.
You're absolutely correct. It's a very high and very difficult legal burden for anyone to overcome. And this is not a regular case. It's a case with exceptional circumstances. The first issue is he didn't allocute. That's the first thing that always sticks out to me. It really bothered me that he didn't allocute. And
yes, you can watch this over on YT. Crime and Justice with Donna Rotuno. I think that's as close as I'll get.
And that caused a lot of problems.
Same.
Because that's supposed to happen. Well, let's take a step back and ask ourselves what we don't know. Who was the NBC Dateline leak? Wasn't me.
Correct.
Who was it? The Ada County Sheriff's Department's investigating Ann Taylor's office. That would have been, and the special master who did the investigation knew before the plea who it was, and they put that on file and they sealed it. Brian Koberger doesn't know who that leak was. It didn't help him. It hurt him badly. So he should know. If Ann Taylor knows, and she definitely knows, she would have to know because she's part of that sealed material. She would have to have reviewed it. She certainly didn't pass that along to Koberger. So that's a problem. That's the first little hurdle there that's going to contextualize why he wasn't looped in and why he was coerced into taking this deal and why he was told to lie, why he was told to perjure himself. And again, this is something that people do all the time under the stress and duress of a defense attorney telling him, I'm not taking this to trial. For what is it, like a third, 30% of all of the people who are exonerated by the Innocence Project basically confessed and took a plea deal at the urgence of their defense attorney because they were frightened they were going to lose a trial. That's a third. That's not a joke. That's something.
1/3.
We have to think about how our legal system works.
That's not a joke. 1/3 of the Innocence Project are, with that plea deal, whether they're forced or think they have to, or, bad counsel, however, Dr. Turvey's saying it with his chest right there. But something to think about. There's so many people firing back, well, I would never plead guilty and blah, blah, blah. And this is so circumstantial. And, maybe people will laugh because you can only refer to shows so much, but we're not talking about Law and Order. Let's talk about like when you're watching real docus and they're showing you real footage of them interviewing people, right? You can bring up so many different scenarios where someone is innocent, but you're watching them drill them for 8 hours and eventually that person just fucking cracks. And then it brings up this whole, well, I wouldn't crack and blah, blah, blah. And it's so circumstantial. It truly, truly is. And we recently talked about that docu together. What was it? American. Oh my gosh, you guys remind me in the comments. American something story. Oh my gosh, with the husband and the wife. Denise, was it Hendricks or Nightmare, American Nightmare, but with Denise and them not believing her and the two different sides. But anyways, you see the footage of them interviewing him, and he doesn't ever the husband anyways, and he never admits to it, but you see him just breaking down. But again, he doesn't ever admit it, but you're watching him just like, what the fuck? And eventually he'll ask for an attorney. He was innocent the entire time, but that story was fucking wild. That story was so wild. Who would believe it? Truthfully. But they treated him like shit, and I'll never get over that because it isn't just not about believing them. They went on national television as a police department and called them both fucking liars. Not just him, but his wife. Or I think they were, dating at the time, fiance, whatever. And she was a victim. And she had trauma inside her body, if you know what I'm talking about. And they tried to fucking refer her. And they tried to refer back to that movie Gone Girl because it came out like a year prior to this fucking tragedy that she went through. And they tried saying she was some Gone Girl. She had actual evidence of trauma inside her body, if you know what I'm talking about. And they said, no. But that officer, Misty, who kept going and going and going until she found the victim with blonde hair. So some people are absolutely angels and they're exactly where they're supposed to be for their jobs. And then there's people who fucking suck. So
the next thing is...
Sorry, rant over.
That if this... I really appreciate that Judge Hitler appeared, on paper at least, to be taking this seriously by accepting the the filing and then appointing the new attorney. I don't know. It concerns me that it's a small town attorney that's got a 1-star rate. It concerns me a bit who the attorney is, but maybe he's better than we know, and maybe he's got death experience that we don't know about. So that's the next part. It's not just about the legal hurdles; it's about the competence and quality of your representation, right? But the other thing is that it's a pro form. It's the next step that has to happen in the process. You've done this before, I'm sure. And I don't know whether you ever worked with innocence networks before, but I have through my entire career. In fact, I started working with the innocence. My first big case, high-profile case, was the West Memphis case, and I worked directly with the Innocence Project out of Cardozo Law in that case. And the process and the metrics and the intake ability of a Innocence Project is dependent upon all the other appeals being denied or completed. Those processes completed. So in terms of it being a stepping stone towards other legal avenues, you have to knock them down one at a time, right? One thing at a time. You can't just skip to the end, right? So I see it as a big legal hurdle. I fear that Ann Taylor is going to be in a lot more trouble than she thinks, because the communications that she had with everyone are documented. They're all documented. So all that stuff is going to come out. She no longer holds the privilege, Kohberger does, and if he gets his day in court, a hearing, which I worry that he won't, then all that stuff could come in. All those communications with family members and Kohberger himself, which he would want to have come out, about the nature and extent of the coercion to him and his family by the attorney team, right? We're not living in the old days where it's somebody's word. We don't take people at their word anymore because we can't. We have digital evidence we can use, text messages, video calls, video chats. The very evidence that we collected, we should have all collected in this case and disclosed initially, which took years to disclose, is the very evidence that would be...
Can't take nobody's word no more. That's why there's digital evidence, forensic evidence. I wonder why he said you can't take their word.
Presented in this court, in this type of hearing. So I'm not as pessimistic as you are, but I am realistic, which is I know what the hurdles are, and as you said, Mr. Kohberger is not an idiot either. So for him to put this on the table tells me that he's ready to go, and I don't think that his legal team is prepared for what he's going to present.
Well, and I think to your point about if we just start back with the original Dateline leak, I mean, if that comes back, if that came from his own lawyers, I mean, right there, you put him in a position where he was never defended properly.
At the direction of the attorney, right? And not just the attorney team, but also you got 3 attorneys and their assistants, and then you've also got, kind of a rogue defense expert right now going out there saying contrary things,
Who do you think he's talking about right there? A rogue expert going out there, going back and forth, saying wild things? I wonder. Tell me who you guys think he's talking about.
And so we don't know. All we know is what he's thinking.
Caroline, I hope you do. Georgie, Sarah, right? Cyree. In my own opinion, they all are comfortable in their own ways with their what I believe are if you want to say low blows or whatever. But it was Whitcomb. Remember when we listened to Whitcomb the other day in his interview, and he was talking about Cyree? I think it was Dax Shepard, and he was like, yeah, and he was talking about Cyree, and he was like, yeah, he just had like a book come out a week ago. I don't know what it's called. And then he just kept talking like that's a low blow. That's a low blow. Like, he just had a book come out. I don't know what it's called, and kept going. I love when they do that.
He came from the defense, and I know who it wasn't.
If that's...
And what Dr. Turvey again just said, because I interrupted, is that leak, because she's like, it could be his attorney or someone within the attorney team, right? And he's like, or one of the experts. And I'm just like, oh...
the case. I mean, that is just, crazy. Now, let's talk about the evidence that they do believe, right, that they had against Kohberger from this whole time. And I know we talked about it last time you were on. I know it's part of Christopher Whitcomb's Broken Plea book. But talk to me again about, they basically found Brian Koberger based on the DNA that they got from the IgG DNA testing on the knife sheath. And I know that part of the big contention here is that knife sheath, the chain of custody wasn't proper, where it was found versus where it was in photos, all of those things. So talk to us again about because that really was the only piece of evidence they had other than the description of a vehicle, right? They didn't really have anything else. So that's what led them to Brian Koberger. So talk to me again about that and then what the issues were with that chain of custody, because I think it's important for people to remember that while they're listening today.
Right, so two things. One is that we don't know. As I'm sitting here today, I cannot confirm to you by any forensic metric or by any judicial testimony or any unsworn testimony, anything like that. I cannot attest to you that I know for sure how Brian Koberger became a suspect. What I do know is at every opportunity, there was deflection, there was dissembling, and there was withholding by law enforcement about how that exactly happened. At one point, you have a probable cause statement saying it was from an informant. And then at one point, it's the IgG. And then you have the experts in DNA being fired on both sides. I mean, it's just like nobody was getting the answers that they wanted, and people were getting terminated. It's one of the weirdest cases ever. This was an issue that should have been resolved with testimony under oath and documentation provided by the state. They have yet to provide that clearly, in my opinion. So I cannot tell you that. Yeah. And the fact that I can't tell you that should tell you that they're still, faffing about it to try to create. They're searching for a narrative still, I think.
And in terms of what you were able to review, do you know if you were given access to all of the evidence, or were you given access to certain pieces of evidence?
Me too.
How do you know that what Ann Taylor allowed you to look at was actually everything she had?
I'm smiling because I really love this question from prosecutors or attorneys when I'm on the stand. So did you look at everything? And the answer to that, there's only one answer to that is, how can I possibly know the answer to that?
I understand.
Well,
I couldn't know. I've seen everything.
Sometimes my fingers do
tell you
that
this.
too.
Ann Taylor gave experts like myself access to a OneDrive on Google Drive that was called Expert One or whatever. And anytime you wanted to access it, you had to log in, put in the password. That would send her an email, and she would send you a text message with a verification code. Okay, so pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with any of that. What I do know is I thought I was given, I asked for certain things. I make a list of things that I asked for. It's a pro forma list I asked for in every case. And so I do that, and then we go to Idaho to do the evidence viewing, which I do in almost every case that I can. I do an evidence viewing to see what they got, to check chains of custody, to check, like I was just in a case in Washington. It was a double homicide, and I had an item, and it's no fault of anybody. This was just an innocent mistake.
This is itchy.
Somebody collected an item, and it said stun gun on it, right? I open up the bag, it's a flashlight, not a stun gun. There's no stun gun in there, okay? This was just a mistake, okay? And I wouldn't, it will get mentioned, but it's not, there isn't a lot of other mistakes around that. Do you know what I mean? So it was an error.
Yeah, of course.
Somebody thought it was a stun gun, and that's how they labeled it, and they got a new system. They're working on this particular location. It's all, I'm not out for blood. I just want to know what happened. In this case, I went there.
Sure.
And there were two sets of evidence. One is the evidence that the law enforcement collected, and it was the mattress from Ethan and the knife sheath that was collected. Both of them have falsified chains of custody. Both of them, it's not just a knife sheath. It's a couple other things, and many of the other items.
Not just the knife sheath. There are multiple items that have an issue with chain of custody, including the mattress, it sounds like, or that part of the crime scene. Multiple, plural, okay? More than one. Let's keep listening.
Items have correct chains of custody on them, with multiple people signing them. So we know that they know how to do it correctly, and it's not improper, it's illegal. It's a falsification of evidence. It's actually tampering with evidence. That would be
illegal.
The charge, and also false swearing. You can't lie. It's a sworn document that you're filling out. So it's not like
of course.
Oops, I slipped and fell and filled it out for everybody wrong. No. That's not what happened. How did I know whether or not I had received everything from Ann Taylor? I can tell you that I didn't. because when I got to the bed frame that Ann Taylor's team had forced the police to collect before they destroyed the house, along with many other bloody items that the police did not want to check, did not want to collect.
Jesus.
I found the hair in this item. I'm like, what is going on here? This is looks like a palm print on the side, and there's just all this hair there.
A palm print on the side and hair there. Oh, I feel like I got freaking hair in my mouth, you guys.
What is this? And I look at it, it's Ethan's, the bed frame. It's white with wooden slats. And I'm like, what's this? And they're like, oh, that's the hair. Don't worry about that. We'll talk to you about that later. So we go back and we talk about it later, and they disclosed to me new autopsy photos that they hadn't given to me before. And other photographs that they'd taken of that, defense photographs that they had taken of the house before it was demolished that they had not given to me. So they were playing their cards very close to the vest in terms of sharing material, even with me,
So you just heard it from Dr. Turvey. They even limited him as to what photos they showed with him.
I found to be, I let him know that would.
And then eventually, whether it was him or he kept searching for them, as you guys just heard him say, he got more of them.
Was not okay. You got to share with me everything because I anticipate being on stand.
Absolutely.
And he just said, "This is not okay."
And I'm going to get this
I'll
question.
go back 1 minute here so we can kind of
Taken of the house
hear that again.
It was demolished that they had not given to me. So they were playing their cards very close to the vest
my nose.
in terms of sharing material, even with me, which I found to be. I let them know that was not okay. You got to share with me everything because I anticipate being on stand.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to get this question from a very smart prosecutor named Donna, who's going to ask me, how do you know you've seen everything? And I'm going to have to throw you under the bus, and I'll do it.
That's right. That's right. Say, sorry, I don't know that answer.
No. Let's hear him again say he's going to throw it under the bus.
From a very smart prosecutor named Donna, who's going to ask me, how do you know you've seen everything? And I'm going to have to throw you under the bus, and I'll do it.
That's right. That's right.
My favorite part about watching Dr. Turvey, now again, he's only done interviews with the Queens and Donna, the Queens and Ron. Something about, I feel like that I've noticed about Dr. Turvey is that when he says something like that, almost just like a confident, smart-ass remark, if you want to say, but again, confident, he always will like kind of smile and then take a drink of whatever he's drinking and then, carry on. It's just quite funny.
That's right. Say, sorry, I don't know that answer. And
that's what he just did after he said, and I will, as far as throwing you under the bus.
So many pretrial motions here. There was a lot of pretrial litigation in this case. And I don't remember any pretrial litigation dealing with chains of custody and whether or not certain items should be used, right? I think they did do it on the knife sheath, right? But I don't know if they did it on anything else.
They didn't know until like a month. No, it was like maybe a few weeks before the plea, because it got brought. One of the investigators brought a question to my attention, which led us down this rabbit hole. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right, because I don't think like that. I don't think that people are lying. But I also think as a scientist, which is that if I see something wrong in one spot, I know I got to look in the other spots too. I can't just now accept it without question. So you're always supposed to be checking change of custody, and I'd love to take credit for finding everything, but I didn't. I'm the forensic scientist though. So if an investigator brings me a piece of evidence and asks me about it, then I give my opinion, then that becomes evidence. And then it causes us to look at other things. And the change of custody, we're all falsified on those as well.
I mean, that would have been an amazing pretrial motion, because then you put that out there, you show the weakness, and then you put the police officers on the stand and they have to answer to this. And, I'm still trying cases. I did a jury last week and I had a police officer admit to me that yes, evidence helps. Well, gee, go figure. Yes, it does. And so it's amazing. Yeah, it was such an amazing answer. And so, I look at this and I think to myself, these are defense dreams, right? These types of motions, to be able to put this out there and possibly not only cut through evidence, but if you cut through enough evidence that the prosecution can't use, and if a judge tosses it out, or even if the judge doesn't toss it out, you're preserving all these rights on appeal. It just is amazing to me that given all the other work that they did, and maybe you're right, maybe this comes down to the fact that she realized she was going to have some issues with regard to these leaks, and thought we better get out of this case as quickly as we can. And if that's the case, that is an injustice to everyone in this case, not only Brian Koberger, but everyone.
I will submit to you that the misconduct goes further than just Ann Taylor. It goes to Becca Barlow, it goes to the other attorney, and it goes to their forensic psychologist who was behaving in a way that is completely improper. And certainly that was my experience with her, but also it was the experience of Mr. Koberger. She was there, instead of in her role as an evaluator, she was doing all kinds of other things that she shouldn't be doing. And I've worked so many death penalty cases.
Interesting.
The lines are so very clear about what your role is, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, the types of communication that you have, difference between treatment and diagnosis, which is a therapeutic position, and then assessment of mental faculty for a forensic assessment, a forensic position. These two areas are in conflict, and you can't have the same person doing both. And so in this case, the lines were so blurred for everybody, myself not included, because I've done this so many times. I protect myself very carefully because I anticipate testimony, and I anticipate having to answer questions under oath. And I alone can be held accountable, whereas somebody who's not going to testify, or a lawyer, will not be held to account the same way. So I agree with you. It's a travesty, but what I think people need to understand from this is that it is far worse than most people understand. The conduct that was engaged in by the defense team, the conduct that was engaged in by the person who made the leak, depending on who that is, the lack of transparency of the defense team to Mr. Koberger, and all the other allegations of being coerced. I mean, he's not going to make that allegation unless he has the evidence. And if she's communicating with him over text messages, well, guess what?
Right, exactly. And the real travesty, beyond, obviously locking up somebody if you don't have the proof, but the real travesty too is...
Thanks, Megan. Appreciate that. Thank you.
If let's say that the judge says, you know what, Mr. Koberger, we're going to let you withdraw your plea. We're going to start this over from the beginning. I mean, the expense alone to the taxpayer to have to do this again would be horrible. I mean, lawyers take oaths, and if you can't trust that your own lawyer is going to do what's best for you, or at least put you in a position where you make the decision, right? Here's all the evidence. Here's Dr. Turvey's report. Here's everybody else's findings. Here's what we've discovered. And at the end of the day, they're offering to take the death penalty off the table. Do you want it or not based on the evidence? That's one thing, right? And there's a lot of people who I think should go to trial that sometimes don't, because they don't want to take the risk. And that's a decision that clients make. But that is completely different than being put in a position where you're not told about pieces of evidence, or you're not told about strength of evidence, or you're not told about the way experts view evidence. That's a completely separate conversation.
Yes, so to your first point, let's talk about the money, because that's been covered a lot. And I think it's important for people to understand that the death penalty is expensive. It's one of the reasons why many states stopped doing it. Because when you are working a case, and you're working... Now, let me give you full disclosure. My contract was for about $25,000. That's about $10,000 more than I normally make on a given case, right? And that's disclosing a lot, because most experts don't like to talk about money. If I worked only for the prosecution, I'd be able to charge between $150,000 and $200,000 per case.
Wild.
I don't do that. I work for either side. The money is not what's important to me. Most of the money is not going to have... A lot of money will be spent by the defense, but most of the money will be spent by the state, all right, to try to make their case. I have not seen cases spend this much money in a long time, and this much money for so little result. The money shouldn't even be the conversation. The conversation should be, how did we spend this much money and we still don't have answers for the prosecution? Or we have overstated, overcompetent evidence. And I can tell you it's because they basically, handed the investigation and the forensics over to the FBI and let them do it. And just kind of like, well, we don't really know anything about that. We'll let you do it. And the FBI were overconfident and wrote reports that said one thing and then had to testify in a way that reduced their confidence about the car, about the DNA, about how people were found, about the cell tower stuff. I mean, it's all just too disgusting. Again, it's disgusting for me to spend this amount of money and not have straight answers from anybody on the state side. Everybody having to reduce themselves. They took this very 100% posture of guilt, and then you get them under oath, and all of a sudden it's 70%, maybe 80%. I don't know. So there is the money issue. Yeah. But the
That's
money,
right.
when you are morally certain that the death penalty is the right thing for your state, it's going to cost you, because we do not put people to death in this country when we think that they might be innocent, right? That's a rule. I mean, we don't kill innocent people, right? We can agree with that, I hope.
Period.
We want to kill innocent people. So in the search for truth,
Thank God.
resources will be expended, not just money, but time and effort and emotions and all that good stuff. So that's the first thing. What I would expect is if Hitler says, I'm going to grant it for you, let's start over, great, let's get a real death qualified attorney that actually has experience working in death penalty trials. Not somebody who's a dealer, who knows how to make a plea, and has maybe worked a couple cases. I mean somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Because this is a case where now everybody's sort of on the line. The second thing is, if anybody on the side of the state or the defense has engaged in misconduct, they have opened themselves up to litigation and lawsuits. I worked on a case in Connecticut. What was it? Versus Birch and Henning. The Birch and Henning case. These were it was a home invasion where the only evidence in the case was DNA from blood alleged to have been found on a towel. That was the only evidence, all right, in the whole case. And I did the examination of that evidence in the case, and I found that the expert in that case had falsified that item. And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of Connecticut. That expert was Henry Lee, my mentor. Now, what happened?
Wow.
He got sued personally, and he got sued to the tune of $30 million, and he lost. He refused to show up to defend himself. He knew what he had done. He had dry labbed this result for the police. There was a bunch of other cases that were going on at the same time where the same allegations were being made. But this was back in 2011.
You guys, sorry, I'm gonna cough. Turvey has so much integrity that, gosh, now I'm trying to think of the word. It started with an E. Group chat, help me out. Was it his mentor? Was it actually mentor, not an E word? Fuck. Whoever that was in Turvey's life, damn. It didn't matter. That didn't matter because they just said, here, we can go back and re-listen. Yeah, we can go back and re-listen to that just so we make sure. It's so everyone can understand this man's integrity. This is actually insane. Thank you, Caroline. Mentor. I thought it was mentor, and I'm like, why am I stuttering on this?
And he got sued to the tune of $30 million.
It was his effing, yeah, let's listen to this.
Examination of that evidence in the case, and I found that the expert in that case had falsified that item. And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of Connecticut.
Supreme
That
Court.
expert was Henry Lee, my mentor.
Mentor, okay.
Now, what happened?
Wow.
He got sued personally,
His mentor.
and he got sued to the tune of $30 million, and he lost. He refused to show up to defend himself. He knew what he had done. He had dry labbed this result for the police. There was a bunch of other cases that were going on at the same time where the same allegations were being made. But this was back in 2011.
Dr. Turvey don't give a who. Dr. Turvey don't care who the fuck you are, man. Thank God. Some people are exactly where they're supposed to be for their jobs. And this is, hopefully, it gives people enough hope to still believe. And, of course, some people, I truly believe, as cheesy as it sounds, that the good still outweighs the evil in this world. Even if, you know, you have to be louder, you have to fight for it. But the truth can handle anything. And I just, as cheesy as it sounds, Dr. Turvey is moving mountains, even though it shouldn't feel like he has to move mountains in this situation, because it never should have gotten here, nor should anyone have to fight this hard to have proper justice. But it doesn't matter who the fuck you are, whether you're his mentor or anybody in his life. If you don't have, if you're lying or if you falsified something or whatever the case may be, he don't give a fuck. You going down. It doesn't get better than that for integrity.
So when experts lie, there should be consequences.
Period.
In many states there are.
Sure,
When
just
lawyers
like police
lie,
or anybody.
persons
Yes,
aren't perfect,
absolutely.
there should be consequences. And that's a separate conversation. What I'm concerned about is people have already kind of decided, well, he's guilty, so he's done. He already said he was guilty. Again, 1/3 of defendants who are investigated by the Innocence Project are found to have been wrongfully convicted. 1/3 of them were coerced by their defense attorneys. This is a common concept. I am so grateful to you as an attorney, as a criminal justice professional, that you and I can meet, regardless of the side that we take, on this very even plane of, hey, we don't do that. We let the client decide. You give them my job is to educate attorneys educate the client, and my job then becomes maybe educate the court, maybe educate a jury. But ultimately, there's a trier of fact that's going to come in and make a decision. We want them to have the best and fullest and most complete set of information that exists. You and I can agree on that without getting mad at each other. That's not the world we live in
Absolutely.
right now. Nobody wants anybody to have a fair shake. Nobody wants anybody to the truth to come out. People decide who the monsters are, and then they go down that road instead of doing the investigation.
It's interesting you say that, because just this last week I did a jury, and it was an attempted murder case, and the client had another lawyer for the first 7 years that his case was pending. And we came in, and I think in about 8 months decided to take the case to trial, and this guy was trying to push this guy to take a deal every which way from Sunday. And we came in and I talked to him about that deal, and I talked to him about why it was less of a risk, because it was much less time than he would serve if he lost. But at the end of the day, he has a right to have his day in court. And we tried that case, and that jury came back in about 4.5 hours with a not guilty. So, you have to be able to, and for clients that say, I did not do this, I am actually innocent, and I want to have my day in court, then they're willing to take a risk.
That's exactly right. If you have somebody who's guilty and they get a good plea deal, they're going to take it, right? And that's the problem.
Yeah.
That sets up a stereotype. And if you apply that stereotype or that caricature of a defendant to Brian Koberger, you're going to miss all the important information and facts and details underneath the surface that are going on that he has not been talking about. Like I said, he's been a good client, as far as I can tell, by virtue of doing what he was told, as well as his family, and keeping their mouths shut.
Talk to me a little bit about the hair that was found in Ethan Chapin's hand. I know we talked about this originally. This is something that's gotten a lot of communication online and otherwise, and that the hair did not match Brian Koberger's, but there's some inconclusive facts out there. And again, because the prosecutors really didn't answer, and because Koberger didn't really allocute, there's still a lot of questions surrounding that hair. The police are saying it was tested, it wasn't Koberger's, that it was Chapin's himself. Now, is that true, or do we have no idea who that hair belongs to?
Nobody who's under oath is saying that, and no report says that it belongs to Ethan. That is where our world exists. So anybody who's saying these is guessing. They're saying maybe it's it, maybe it's not. Just like Ann Taylor and her team said, they asked me, what if it belongs to somebody in the house? I'm like, well, maybe it does. We need to find out who that is now. It got in his hand, right? Because that would wreck the timeline. Well, let's talk about what does exist, okay? The hair, my first encounter was the hair on the bed frame. And it was like probably 20, 30 strands, about that long, coming off the bed frame, attached in blood on the bed
30 strands
frame with Ethan's
That's a lot.
imprint.
I mean,
Ethan's
20
And when he's like describing it too, he's making it look like it's quite long, okay?
30 strands, that's a lot. Yeah,
it's way more than that. Okay, so but that's what I could see.
It's way more than that, he also says, just so we're clear.
I can show you the pictures right now if you want. But the pictures of the hair on the bed frame and that are also attached to the wall is even more. There's even a bigger clump from what's on the bed frame attached to the wall. When they pulled it away, there's a nice little streak of blood. When they pulled it away, there's hair attached to the wall and sealed to the wall with blood. And it's even more than that amount of hair. Then we have the hair that's in his hand, the photos taken at the crime scene. Okay, so there's 3 different photos. So anybody who has not looked at all the evidence and who is speaking on issues that they don't know anything about because they're not a reconstructionist or not a forensic scientist, anybody who's saying that those hairs doesn't exist, it means that they haven't looked at the evidence and aren't aware of what's going on in the case. They viewed the case through their very narrow aperture. I did crime scene analysis and reconstruction, which means my hands were in everything. Right, so those photographs exist, and not only that, they were leaked online. There are people that have put these photographs online and put them into nice collages for everybody to see. So the first hurdle to clear is, do they exist? Yes. Then when the police wrote a report about it, it was described in the autopsy report and the police reports as debris in his hands. There was no debris in his hands. It was just human hair, right?
Wild.
A clump of it in his hands, then some stuck to the bed frame, and then some stuck to the wall. That hair was of such significance that they sent it off to the FBI lab, who looked at it under a microscope and said, these hairs do not share similar characteristics. Therefore, there's no DNA testing needed to be done. And Brian Koberger is excluded. These are the facts. These are not Brent Turvey's speculations. This is what exists on the record.
Facts.
Now, have you heard anything about that? Other than through me, no. No one wants to talk about it. Why? Because it would upend the case. It would upend everything. It would change everything we think about the timeline, the narrative, the interaction.
There you go.
Who was in what room. But there's other evidence.
I want to make it so clear that I have a video on TikTok, and it's the only video that I can find on the whole fucking app of TikTok that I addressed Miss Ann Taylor, and it's the only video that I addressed her, I do believe. And I addressed Bill Thompson and maybe Moscow PD, I don't fucking know. But this is not the first time I addressed Moscow PD or Bill Thompson. But this was the first time I addressed Ann Taylor in my video. And was I a little aggressive? Sure. Respectfully, as I believe I should have been. That's my own opinion. But it is the only video that I can find on the app that it says, check your sources before sharing. And what's within that video? Me screaming, me yelling, me being as loud as I can, however the fuck you want to interpret it, loud, that Ethan handed her everything she needed and she did nothing with it. She did absolutely nothing with that. And weeks later, however long later, okay. Passionate, yeah. Shout out to Kristen for that word passionate as well, too, that she's used for me as well. But that's the only video I can find that says check your sources before sharing. I play some of the interview of Dr. Turvey with the Queens in that interview where you can hear Dr. Turvey talk about this. And I got slapped with a warning for that. Just check your sources, whatever. And yeah. I stand 10 toes down on that video that I made. And I always felt like that and I always believed that. But of course, weeks and weeks later, when you have somebody like Cyree who then puts himself on the fucking TV and not only tries to say that he can place Brian Koberger in the living room, because no, he fucking can. Cyree also tried to say that there was no hair in Ethan's hand, or that it simply was this, or that it simply was that, and Dr. Turvey was full of shit. And we talked about that together as a community. And what a disgrace to our justice system. What a disgrace to Ethan's memory that he possibly, presumably, grabbed the hair of one of the perps before he died. And they did nothing with it other than just make sure it didn't match Brian. And then they were like, we're cool. What? Ethan, according to them, according to the narrative, according to no blood found on his feet, he didn't leave that bed. So you mean to tell me that that young adult, 6'4", 230, possibly watched his girlfriend be attacked? Or if he was sleeping, he was sleeping. He either grabbed somebody's hair when he was sleeping, or he grabbed the hair of somebody attacking his girlfriend, or he grabbed the hair of somebody who was holding him back. But nonetheless, Ethan, and not only just him, but all the victims, but Ethan absolutely handed them everything they needed to close this fucking case. And they ignored it. And they did nothing with it. And shame on whoever the fuck wrote that up as debris. What a disgrace to our justice system, but most importantly, what a disgrace to Ethan's memory. That young man, everybody talked about how athletic he was. He showed, that was in my video, he showed the world how athletic he was. He grabbed somebody's hair, and there is a huge chance that whoever took Ethan's life, or they, didn't give Ethan the proper chance to fight back. And that young man still grabbed hair. A fistful, a handful. Wow. What more could you ask from a victim, truthfully? So, I don't know how many days are left for the judge to come back here with a decision on that petition, but I am slowly putting things together for a next video, and I don't know. I don't know if they're going to enjoy the speakerphone anymore, I can tell you that. Well, that's just my own opinion, but I leave it up to the viewer to make your own conclusion of who you want to believe in this situation. But do not forget that one person is lying and one person is telling the truth. And it's absolutely crazy that it comes down to a situation of a victim in a brutal unaliving grabbing someone's hair and a discussion whether or not that was true. What an absolute fucking disgrace. So, yeah. Wild. Wild, you guys. Don't worry, we'll get rid of the accounts. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry, gone now.
Down in the first floor bedroom, we have the jacket that didn't get collected or tested properly. We have a bloody bracelet that was on the floor that got picked up and moved by police and put on
the haters come in randomly in the group chat. Just remember that. Oh, imagine being that pathetic that you have to do that. Super quick, not to interrupt and go on another rant, but I was trying to think about how I was going to talk about a different case, but it's not about fearing men and it's not about fearing women. It's about weak men and weak women, and that's who took the lives of Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie. And this is a huge fucking cover-up, and there are so many people involved. So what's going to happen? They're going to come into everybody's live who talks about it, anybody who has a voice. They're going to try to discredit Turvey. They're going to try to discredit everybody. So, again, I leave it up to you to decide where you want to fall.
They sent it off to the FBI lab, who looked at it under a microscope and said,
they don't want to go to prison,
share similar characteristics. Therefore, there's no DNA testing needs to be done. And Brian Koberger is excluded. These are the facts.
No,
these are
Barbara.
not Brent Turvey's speculations. This is what exists on the record. Now, have you heard anything about that? Other than through me, no. No one wants to talk about it. Why? Because it would upend the case. It would upend everything. It would change everything we think about the timeline, the narrative, the interaction, who was in what room. But there's other evidence. There's down in the first floor bedroom, we have the jacket that didn't get collected or tested properly.
Dylan's jacket.
We have a bloody bracelet that was on the floor that got picked up and moved by police and put on one of the desks and ignored and not collected. We have many different items of evidence like that weren't exactly examined or considered in the timeline because they got lost or forgotten or just plain ignored because they didn't fit the narrative. I come back to the same thing every time. When you want to know what happened, you examine the evidence. When you want to know what the truth is, you pursue that evidence to find out
it's my world.
whose it is, how it got there, conditions of transfer, and what that means for the entirety of the reconstruction of the case. And there's not a real interest in doing that. In fact, they were so disinterested in doing that they demolished the house. I never even heard of that before, where you demolished the house.
I know, me neither.
And then they created this 3D model of it that I went out again to examine and took my photographs and did a 3D scan of it. It doesn't even match the interior of the house. It's full of incorrect access, incorrect sizes. It's just a big sign there, not to scale. They wanted to use it as a trial exhibit. Didn't have anything in it. Didn't have anything to do with the case. Just an approximation of maybe what the house might have looked like inside. We're not sure.
I'm going to say that I feel like no matter which way you fall on this, right? Whether you think Brian Koberger did it, whether you think he didn't do it, no matter what you think, I think everyone that's paid attention to this case has always wanted to see a trial here, because a trial was either going to expose that there was or there wasn't enough evidence, and a trial could potentially answer the question why or how. And so no matter how you feel about this, no one got those answers. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Judge Hippler does and see if we ever get those answers. But no matter what happens, I'm sure, Dr. Turvey, I will want to talk to you about it. So I hope you'll be back with me, and I thank you so much.
There we have it. We'll go back to that is it. We're gonna go. I'm just gonna play this last part.
You're gonna miss all the important information and facts and details underneath the surface that are going on that he has not been talking about. Like I said, he's been a good client as far as I can tell, by virtue of doing what he was told, as well as his family, and keeping their mouths shut.
Talk to me a little bit about the hair that was found in Ethan Chapin's hand. I know we talked about this originally. This is something that's gotten a lot of communication online and otherwise, and that the hair did not match Brian Kohberger's, but there's some inconclusive facts out there. And again, because the prosecutors really didn't answer and because Kohberger didn't really allocute, there's still a lot of questions surrounding that hair. The police are saying it was tested, it wasn't Kohberger's, that it was Chapin's himself. Now, is that true, or do we have no idea who that hair belongs to?
Nobody who's under oath is saying that, and no report says that it belongs to either. That is where our world exists. So
make sure you guys, again, if anybody is saying in the comments that, oh, it's Ethan's hair, that was no. Never has that been confirmed. Never. Never. They just make shit up.
Well, anybody who's saying these is guessing. They're saying, maybe it's it, maybe it's not. Just like Ann Taylor and her team said, they asked me, what if it belongs to somebody in the house? I'm like, well, maybe it does. We need to find out who that is and how it got in his hand, right? Because that would wreck the timeline. Well, let's talk about what does exist, okay? The hair, my first encounter was the hair on the bed frame. And it was like probably 20, 30 strands, about that long, coming off the bed frame.
He's showing like a solid 6 inches right there.
With Ethan's
That's a lot. I mean, 20, 30 strands, that's a lot. Yeah.
It's way more than that. Okay, so, but that's what I could see. I can show you the pictures right now if you want. But the pictures of the hair on the bed frame and that are also attached to the wall is even more. There's even a bigger clump from what's on the bed frame attached to the wall. When they pulled it away, there's a nice little streak of blood. When they pulled it away, there's hair attached to the wall and sealed to the wall with blood. And it's even more than that amount of hair. Then we have the hair that's in his hand, the photos taken at the crime scene. Okay, so there's 3 different photos. So anybody who has not looked at all the evidence and who is speaking on issues that they don't know anything about because they're not a reconstructionist or not a forensic scientist, anybody who's saying that those hairs doesn't exist, it means that they haven't looked at the evidence and aren't aware of what's going on in the case. They viewed the case through their very narrow aperture. I did crime scene analysis and reconstruction, which means my hands were in everything. Right, so those photographs exist, and not only that, they were leaked online. There are people that have put these photographs online and put them into nice collages for everybody to see. So the first hurdle to clear is, do they exist? Yes. Then when the police wrote a report about it, it was described in the autopsy report and the police reports as debris in his hands. There was no debris in his hands. Yes. It was just human hair, right?
Crazy.
A clump of it in his hands, then some stuck to the bed frame, and then some stuck to the wall.
3 different places of hair. 3 different places. His hand, the floor, and I do believe like the frame. But you heard him just say it himself. But 3 different places, hair, the wall.
That hair was of such significance that they said,
right here,
those photographs exist, and not only that, they were leaked online. There are people that have put these photographs online and put them into nice collages for everybody to see. So the first hurdle to clear is, do they exist? Yes. Then when the police wrote a report about it, it was described in the autopsy report and the police reports as debris in his hands. There was no debris in his hands. Yes. It was just human hair, right? A clump of it in his hands, then some stuck to the bed frame.
His hands, some stuck to the bed frame.
And then some stuck to the wall.
And then some stuck to the wall. Some stuck to the wall, some stuck to the bed frame, some stuck to his hand, some in his hand. Some stuck to the wall, some stuck to the bed frame, some in his hands. That's a lot of fucking hair. The audacity to label that debris. Thank you guys so much for the support tonight. Once again, we hit 100K. I see the comments coming in for that. You guys show up every single time for these lives. And again, tonight, I wasn't sure if I would miss some people too. I said I wasn't coming on here, but you guys were obviously on your phone. So thank you for tuning in and being here. When I saw this interview come out today, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm not jumping on here and going over this with you guys. It's so important.
It was of such significance that they sent it off to the FBI lab, who looked at it under a microscope and said, these hairs do not share similar characteristics. Therefore, there's no DNA testing needed to be done.
Did he say there's an actual photo of hair in the hand? Correct. He has that photo according to Dr. Turvey. We have not seen that, but Dr. Turvey is saying he has seen that photo with hair in Ethan's hand. Yep.
And Brian Koberger is excluded. These are the facts. These are not Brent Turvey's speculations.
These are the facts. These are the facts.
What exists on the record. Now, have you heard anything about that?
Thank you, Emma.
Other than through me, no.
Thank you.
No one wants to talk about it. Why? Because it would upend the case. It would upend everything. It would change everything we think about the timeline, the narrative, the interaction.
Thank you, MM. Thank you, Gail. Right, Justina?
Who was in what room? But there's other evidence. There's down in the first floor bedroom, we have the jacket that didn't get collected or tested properly. We have a bloody bracelet that was on the floor that got picked up and moved by police and put on one of the desks and ignored and not collected. We have many different items of evidence like that weren't exactly examined or considered in the timeline because they got lost or forgotten or just plain ignored because they didn't fit the narrative.
Me too, Caroline.
I come back to the same thing every time. When you want to know what happened, you examine the evidence. When you want to know what the truth is, you pursue that evidence to find out whose it is, how it got there, conditions of transfer, and what that means for the entirety of the reconstruction of the case. And there's not a real interest in doing that. In fact, they were so disinterested in doing that they demolished the house. I never even heard of that before, where you demolished the house.
I know, me neither.
And then they created this 3D model of it that I went out again to examine and took my photographs and did a 3D scan of it. It doesn't even match the interior of the house.
So not only did they demolish the house, the 3D whatever, that they just did of it, reconstruction of it, doesn't even match the house. So what the actual fuck? Everybody sucks at their job.
Full of incorrect access, incorrect sizes. It's just a big sign there, not to scale. They wanted to use it as a trial exhibit.
If this case doesn't terrify you, I know, Caroline. I completely agree. Baking Baddie, I agree with that too.
Didn't have anything in it. Didn't have anything to do with the case. Just an approximation of maybe what the house might have looked like inside. We're not sure.
I'm going to say that I feel like no matter which way you fall on this, right? Whether you think Brian Koberger did it, whether you think he didn't do it.
Rewind once more.
When you want to know what the truth is, you pursue that evidence to find out whose it is, how it got there, conditions of transfer, and what that means for the entirety of the reconstruction of the case. And there's not a real interest in doing that. In fact, they were so disinterested in doing that they demolished the house. I never even heard of that before, where you demolished the house.
I know, me neither.
Right,
and then they created this 3D model of it that I went out again to examine and took my photographs and did a 3D scan of it. It doesn't even match the interior of the house. It's full of incorrect access, incorrect sizes. It's just a big sign there, not to scale. They wanted to use it as a trial exhibit. Didn't have anything in it. Didn't have anything to do with the case. Just an approximation of maybe what the house might have looked like inside. We're not sure.
I'm going to say.
All right, we'll pause it there. I just wanted everyone to hear that part about the hair again. So again, yesterday, you guys, all right, good, Laura. Good. Thanks, MM. Again, yesterday, if you guys were here with me, I had talked about, again, not being on here tonight and taking a break. Thanks again, MM, as you're sending those. I was just gonna, take a night off, take a break, whatever. But again, this interview came out And I was like, there's just no way in hell I would not hop on here and not only play it, but show my support for my good friend Kristen, but also her team as well. She's part of the Custody Queens, which is her, Kristen, and Sam. They also work with Ron basically all the time. But the Custody Queens themselves, you know, is a team. Just some badass women right there. And I don't know. I wanted to make sure that I showed up and showed my support because I could not be more. And I don't care if people think it's cheesy or however, but I am so proud of them. I am genuinely so proud of them, and just to be a part of this in any sort of way, small, little. Thank you, Amia, for that. Thank you. And I'm just so proud of them. And again, it can come off cheesy, or it can come off cheesy to people who don't know me or whatever. It doesn't matter. But they genuinely made a fucking difference, and it's insane. I'm happy that everyone got to hear that tonight and hear it come from him too. I think it's very powerful that he said it, that Brian Koberger had no idea about some of this shit, and he had no idea who Turvey was until he did that podcast with the Queens and also Donna. Good night, Lish. If you're leaving, I see people saying good night to you as I rant away. Thank you so much for being here, girl. I'm sure we'll be texting later. But so proud of them. And again, I just didn't want to miss that opportunity. Sorry, I'm trying not to burp on camera. Thank you, Lily. And this is your sign. Again, whether you want to be behind the camera or you don't. And that's okay. You're just as important in the comments, watching, supporting all of us. This is just proof that you absolutely, it's actually not a Red Bull this time. This is just proof that you can make a difference, whether it's just you, whether you're a team, but you absolutely can make a fucking difference. So if people are going to laugh at that, let them fucking laugh. You can make a difference. So we are watching this unfold. Thank you. We are just watching this unfold in front of our fucking eyes, you guys. We are watching one of the biggest, shadiest, dirtiest cover-ups in what I say American history. And we're watching it slowly fucking unfold. I would not be surprised if Brian gets denied here. I feel like they're going to try to make him fight every way. But if he has to go to the Supreme Court, or however that shit all works up there, you know, Turvey talked about that with his mentor. However far that got, that's how far it can go. And he don't give a fuck. He'll throw anybody under the bus, quote unquote, if he has to, if that means putting, you know, integrity. So thank goodness for people like him in this world who are in the positions that they're in. And once again, shout out to the Queens and Ron for that fucking interview. They've done a good few. Make sure you go over to YT, Custody Queens Off the Clock, also here on TikTok as well too, you guys. But make sure you give them your love and your support. Sometimes with those interviews, they even had an interview with Cyree, and that was still important to put that out there. I mean, Turvey again after this. You got Whitcomb as well too, speaking after Cyree said that, saying, nope, this is just the beginning. Right, Ava? Justice will come. Sometimes there are obstacles. Sometimes there are obstacles in the way, and things unfortunately take years, but you guys are all watching this unfold in front of your fucking eyes. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, thank goodness for Whitcomb doing what he did. You've got Turvey doing what he's doing. Holland did an interview with the Queens as well. And, you know, Cyree there too. But put Cyree on the stand, you guys. Put Cyree on the stand. When that interview came out, we had to fight for our fucking lives in the comments, you guys. And we know it. They can put him on the damn news. They put him on so many news stations. It was insane. And people, of course, came after us. But you want to know what? We didn't back down because the truth can fucking hold, and it can go against anything. It can go against anything. And we're going to have to keep going and keep doing this. It's not going to be easy, but I do believe we are getting there. So just know that this is just proof. You're watching it unfold, that your voice matters, even if people tell you it doesn't. It fucking does, okay? So if you believe in not turning the other way when something is wrong, please, again, keep joining me for these lives. And Kristen and I also work together monthly here. We might also talk about other cases as well, too, you guys. So that journey is also coming and, you know, in the works as well, too. So I will try to get Kristen over here on TikTok as well. She's over on, you know, YT a lot, all the time. I'll try to get her back over here, you guys, just so we can show her all the love that they deserve. Again, she's part of a team. I have a relationship with her. We're good friends. Very grateful for her. And she is a fucking badass, okay? They all are. So don't forget to show her your love. I'm going to hop off here tonight, you guys. Thank you for showing me love. I wasn't going to miss this opportunity. So you heard it. I played it a couple times. I'm going to post this video also on YT. Thank you, Alicia. Thanks, MM. Alicia. Thanks, MM. I'm going to hopefully post this over on YT as well, too. So proud of them. So happy to be a part of this, you guys. You guys are all a part of this as well in the comments, too. So let this be your sign. Love you back, Caroline. Alicia, thanks for being here. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Vet Nurse. Georgie. Alyssa. All of you guys. Lish, I know she left. Baking Baddie, everybody, thank you so much for being here. We will be back in the next day or two here. Or you know, if breaking news comes, we'll be here that night, okay? As always, be safe, make safe decisions, drive safe to work tomorrow, and you do not let anybody hold the power over you and your worth, okay? So, you know who the fuck you are, you guys. We'll be back. Bye.